the life of a Voyager mission operator. Hey guys, tonight we're pulling our gaze away from the distant past and focusing on a more recent chapter in our cosmic story. We're going to be talking about the lives of the men and women who held the loneliest job in the universe, the keepers of a fading whisper, the guardians of two tiny emissaries sailing into the dark. Tonight, we follow the life of a Voyager mission operator years after the cheering had stopped and the cameras had been turned away. A life measured in the silent hum of mainframes, the bitter taste of late-night coffee, and the faint signal from a machine billions of miles from home. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. It truly helps the channel find other sleepless souls like us. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I like to imagine someone in a tiny apartment in Tokyo, another in a cabin in Norway, and someone else in bed at 3:40 a.m. in Milwaukee, wondering how astronomy turned into this. Now, dim the lights if you haven't already. Let the world outside your window fade away. Maybe there's a gentle hum from a fan, or the soft whisper of leaves in the breeze. Let's create our own little pocket of tranquility and journey back together across the sands of time. The air is not the dry, climate-controlled air of a Pasadena lab. It is a thick, wet blanket. It is the air of Cape Canaveral, Florida, on August 20th, 1977, and it clings to your skin, heavy with the promise of a thunderstorm. The sky outside is a vast, pale blue, bleached by the relentless sun, and the dominant smell is not of coffee and old carpets, but of salt marsh, ozone, and a faint, thrilling metallic tang that can only be one thing: rocket fuel. You are young. Your hair is much darker, your face unlined by decades of staring at glowing text. You are a junior flight systems engineer, fresh out of college, and you are so far down the operational chain you can barely see the top. You are running on 3 hours of sleep, a dozen cups of burnt syrupy coffee, and a nervous energy so potent it feels like you could power the launch yourself. Your tie feels too tight. Your short-sleeved polyester shirt is already sticking to your back. Your station is not a quiet, private console. It's a cramped metal desk wedged into a long row of identical desks, deep inside a concrete blockhouse. This is not a place of comfort. It is a bunker, designed with slide rules and grim pragmatism to withstand a catastrophic failure on the launch pad a few miles away. The room is a chaotic symphony of noise. The constant, overlapping crackle of dozens of comms loops, the mechanical clatter of teletype machines spitting out reams of paper onto the floor, the urgent but controlled chatter of men in shirt sleeves and narrow ties, their foreheads gleaming with sweat under the harsh, humming fluorescent lights. The air is thick with the smell of cigarette smoke, a blue-gray haze that hangs in the air and stings your tired eyes. Your job is both terrifyingly specific and cosmically important. You are watching a single stream of telemetry from the Titan IIIe launch vehicle. Your entire world has been reduced to a small green cathode ray tube screen, the text fuzzy at the edges. You are monitoring the pressure in the second stage liquid oxygen tank. That's it. That's your whole universe. If the numbers you see on that screen deviate by more than a tiny pre-calculated fraction from the numbers printed on the laminated checklist taped to your console, your sole duty is to press one large, red button on your panel. You try not to think about what happens if you press that button. It initiates a flight termination, a self-destruct. It means turning a $100 million machine and its priceless cargo into a ball of fire over the Atlantic. You try even harder not to think about what happens if you don't press it when you're supposed to, and a faulty tank causes the rocket to veer off course toward a populated area. Your one job is to be the kill switch for this magnificent, expensive dream. For hours, you've been running through simulations, checks, and double checks. The flight director, a chain-smoking veteran named Gene, sits at a console at the front of the room, a glass partition separating him from the rest of the chaos. His voice on the comms loop is a constant, reassuring presence, a voice like gravel, owned by years of this high-stakes work. He is the high priest presiding over this strange technological ritual, and his calm is the only thing holding the room's collective anxiety at bay. T-minus 15 minutes and counting. Gene's voice cuts through the low murmur. A ripple of renewed focus goes through the room. The casual chatter stops instantly. The only sounds now are the hum of electronics, the clatter of the teletypes, and the flight director's steady cadence on the loop. Men stub out their cigarettes. They lean closer to their consoles. You feel your own posture straighten, your focus narrowing until the entire world disappears beyond the glowing green numbers on your screen. They are stable, perfect. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, a frantic, syncopated rhythm against the steady beat of the mission clock. You are a tiny cog in this immense machine of metal, fire, and human ambition, but you know that if your cog fails, the whole clock breaks. Voyager 2 on internal power. The spacecraft is now alive on its own, its plutonium heart beating. Another checkmark on your list. The numbers remain steady, T-minus 60 seconds. The final poll begins. A formal catechism chanted across the room. Propulsion, go flight. Guidance, go flight. Range safety, the person who gives the final okay for you to do your job. Go flight. The voices are tight, clipped, professional. Each go is another stone laid in the foundation of this launch. T-minus 10, 9, 8. You instinctively hold your breath. Your hand hovers near but not touching the red button. Your knuckles are white. 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. The rumble begins. It is not a sound at first. It is a feeling. A low, deep vibration that you feel in the soles of your shoes. A resonance that travels up your legs and into the bones of your chest. It grows steadily, a deep primal roar that seems to shake the very foundations of the concrete blockhouse. The coffee in your styrofoam cup shimmers. On a grainy black and white monitor at the front of the room, you see the rocket rise from the launch pad, impossibly slow at first, as if the Earth itself is reluctant to let it go. Then it gathers speed, a pillar of controlled violence climbing into the sky on a column of fire and smoke. The noise becomes everything. It is a physical force that blots out all thought, a brutal, beautiful sound that hammers at the walls. Your eyes are locked on your screen, a tiny island of green data in a sea of overwhelming sensory input. The numbers are fluctuating, dancing as the rocket fights against gravity, but they are staying within the expected parameters. Your screen is telling the secret, internal story of that fight. Max Q. The flight director's voice is still calm, a miracle of human composure. This is the moment of maximum atmospheric pressure, the most dangerous few seconds for the vehicle's fragile structure. You watch the pressure readings on your screen spike, pushing the very edge of the acceptable limit, and for one heart-stopping second, you think this is it. But then they fall, just as quickly. The rocket has punched through. You shakily make a checkmark on your list. Minutes pass like eons, each second stretching into a small eternity. Stage 1 separation confirmed. A new set of numbers appears on your screen as the second stage ignites high in the atmosphere. These are your numbers. This is your tank. Your focus becomes absolute. The roaring in the blockhouse has faded, the rocket now too high to be heard. The silence it leaves behind is somehow more tense. Your entire world is the pressure in a tank of liquid oxygen miles above the Earth. The numbers are clean, perfect. And then the call comes, SECO, second stage engine cutoff, followed moments later by the one you've been waiting for. Spacecraft separation confirmed. It's over. The rocket has done its job. Your job is done. Your red button is now just a piece of plastic. You hadn't realized you were holding your entire body rigid until you suddenly feel your muscles release, a wave of exhaustion washing over you. A beat of silence hangs in the room, and then it breaks. A wave of exhausted, triumphant cheers erupts through the blockhouse. Men are on their feet, shaking hands, slapping each other on the back, lighting fresh cigarettes with trembling fingers. The accumulated tension of months of work and a terrifying 10-minute launch sequence dissolves into pure, unadulterated relief. You feel a dizzying, light-headed sense of wonder. You, a kid from Ohio who grew up building model rockets in his garage, just helped throw a machine at the stars. A machine that will see Jupiter, Saturn, and maybe even worlds beyond. You slowly push your chair back and stand up, your legs feeling unsteady. You walk with a crowd of smiling, sweating engineers out of the dark blockhouse and into the blinding Florida sun. And as you step outside, you're met with the most profound, deafening silence. The rocket is gone. The sky is empty again, looking as peaceful and innocent as it did an hour ago. The silence left in the wake of that immense, heroic roar is the most beautiful sound you have ever heard. You didn't know it then, standing there blinking in the sun, but you would spend the rest of your life chasing that silence, listening for its faintest echo from the far side of the solar system. The memory of the launch, so loud and violent and full of sun-drenched promise, fades like the echo of a distant explosion, leaving the quiet hum of the mission support area in its place. The smell of smoke and salt marsh is replaced by the familiar, sterile scent of old electronics and recirculated air. You are no longer that young, nervous engineer in a concrete blockhouse. You are here, now. You pull yourself out of bed, your joints protesting with a quiet authority they didn't possess in 1977. The year is 1992. The glory days, the loud days are over. You have the long, quiet watch. Your morning routine is a ritual of suburban quiet that feels like a costume you put on each day. You brew your instant coffee, black and bitter, while the radio on the kitchen counter murmurs about interest rates and a political scandal in Washington. The concerns feel abstract, like news from a foreign country you've never visited. You look out the kitchen window at your small, tidy lawn, dew sparkling on the grass. You see your neighbor Bob meticulously washing his pristine sedan, a weekend ritual he never misses. You exchange a wave. Bob knows you work at JPL. He thinks you talk to satellites. He has no concept of the scale, the distance, the profound loneliness of the conversation you are tasked with maintaining. To him, your job is as abstract as the interest rates are to you. The drive to JPL is the same as always, a slow crawl through traffic until you reach the oasis of calm and academia nestled in the foothills near Pasadena. As your car climbs the gentle rise towards the campus, you feel a tangible transition. You leave behind the world of traffic jams, billboards advertising movies you'll never see, and repetitive radio jingles. You enter a realm of purpose, a quiet bubble where the fundamental laws of physics are the primary topic of conversation. You show your badge to the guard, a man who has seen Nobel laureates and custodians come through this same gate for 30 years. He gives you a familiar, sleepy nod. He doesn't know what you do, not really, only that you've been coming here for this same shift for a very, very long time. Your office is not in one of the grand new buildings with their glass atriums and modern art. You're in Building 230, a functional, sprawling structure that has the distinct, unmistakable smell of old electronics, burnt coffee, and government-grade carpet that has seen too many spills and shuffled feet. You walk down the long, fluorescent-lit corridor, your sensible shoes making a soft, rhythmic squeak on the polished linoleum. The walls are a museum of past glories, a constant, silent reminder of what was. They are covered in mission patches and stunning, glossy photographs from a bygone era, the swirling, chaotic rage of Jupiter's great red spot, the ethereal, majestic grace of Saturn's rings, the startling, deep, impossible blue of Neptune, a world no human knew the true color of until your spacecraft paid it a visit. You walk past them every day. They feel less like scientific achievements and more like family photos from a vacation you took a long, long time ago, when the kids were still young and full of energy. As you round a corner, you see Dave, another veteran from the old days, heading off his night shift. He looks tired, his face etched with the familiar wariness of a man who has spent 8 hours staring at data streams. His tie is loosened, his collar unbuttoned. He gives you a small, knowing smile, a greeting that needs no words between men who share this unique life. "Morning," he grunts, his voice raspy. "She's all yours. Quiet night." Voyager 2 decided its tape recorder needed a little nap around 400, but it woke itself back up an hour later. Threw a fault code, but the self-correcting routine cleared it. "It does that," you reply, already picturing the log entry, the familiar sequence of diagnostic codes. You head to the perpetually burnt pot of coffee in the corner and pour a cup of the black, sludgy lifeblood of the mission. Getting old. "Aren't we all?" Dave says, but this time he lingers for a moment instead of heading straight for the exit. He leans against the wall, folding his arms. "Hey, did you see the budget proposal for next fiscal year? They're talking about cutting the DSN allocation for the interstellar mission by another 5%. You sigh, the bitter coffee matching your mood. It's the same conversation every year, a ritual as predictable as the Earth's orbit. Where do they think the data comes from? Magic? Do they think we just hold a styrofoam cup to the sky? Tell me about it. They see a mission with no new pictures, no flashy press conferences, and they think it's just sitting there on autopilot. They don't get that just listening is the whole point now, that it's harder now than it ever was. He shakes his head, a look of profound weariness on his face. It's like they've forgotten what we're for. He pushes himself off the wall. Anyway, it's your problem now. Keep 'em flying, my friend. He gives you a light clap on the shoulder as he passes, a gesture of solidarity, of passing the baton in this endless, quiet relay. You take your seat at the console. The chair groans in familiar protest. Your primary duty today is to oversee the 3-station ballet, the daily, global choreography of the Deep Space Network. Your connection to the Voyagers, those faint whispers from the void, is entirely dependent on 3 massive radio dishes, each a 70-meter giant, placed with geometric precision around the globe. Goldstone in California's Mojave Desert, Robledo de Chavela in the countryside near Madrid, Spain, and Tidbinbilla, nestled in a valley near Canberra, Australia. As the Earth rotates, a station inevitably dips below the horizon, its line of sight to the spacecraft blocked by the solid body of the planet itself. Before that happens, you must seamlessly hand off the signal to the next station in the chain as it rises. It is a continuous 24-hour-a-day game of catch, played across continents with a ball of data that is billions of miles away. Today, the handover is from Canberra to Madrid. You watch the clock on the wall, its second-hand sweeping with an agonizing slowness that belies the cosmic speeds at play. You have a comms link open to the operators at both stations. You hear the calm, professional voice of the Spanish operator, his English softened by a Castilian accent. Robledo is ready for the handover, JPL. We have the bird in sight. You initiate the sequence from your console in Pasadena. For a few minutes, a critical window of overlap, both the giant dish in Australia and the one in Spain, will track the spacecraft. Their data streams, 2 identical whispers captured from the sky, are displayed side by side on your screen. You are watching the signal-to-noise ratio from both, ensuring the lock from Madrid is solid, stable, and clean before you give the command for Canberra to stand down. A dropped signal, a miscalculation in timing, a moment of atmospheric interference. Any of these could mean losing a priceless packet of data, a packet that might contain the first evidence of the heliopause, the boundary of our solar system. A packet that took half a day to get here and will never, ever be repeated. Today the ballet is flawless. The signal strength from Madrid is perfect. Madrid has the lock, you say into your headset. Canberra, you are cleared to release. Roger that, JPL. Canberra is standing down. See you tomorrow. The data stream from Australia vanishes from your screen. The faint whisper from Voyager is now being caught in a giant metal ear in the Spanish countryside. You've done it 1,000 times, but a small, quiet surge of professional satisfaction still washes over you. You are a conductor of an orchestra with only 3 instruments, playing the quietest symphony ever composed across the largest stage imaginable. With the connection secured, your focus then shifts to the spacecraft's hearts, their radioisotope thermoelectric generators, the RTGs. Inside each, a sphere of plutonium-238, an unstable element, slowly, relentlessly decays. As it decays, it releases a steady, predictable amount of heat. This heat is captured by a web of thermocouples which, through a beautifully simple physical principle, convert that thermal energy directly into electricity. No moving parts, just the slow, steady decay of an atom's heart. They are miracles of engineering, designed by scientists in the 60s and 70s to power these machines for decades, long after solar panels would be rendered useless by the distant, feeble sun. But their power is finite. The decay is constant, predictable, and irreversible. You pull up the power budget, a spreadsheet that is, in its own way, the mission's death certificate. It is the most melancholy document at JPL. It has columns for each spacecraft system, each scientific instrument, and the wattage each one requires. And next to it, the grim, unyielding curve of the total power available. 470 watts at launch in 1977. Now in 1992, barely 300 watts. The number ticks down every single day. Every few months, you and the small, aging team of Voyager veterans have to convene in a conference room and make a terrible choice. You look at the spreadsheet. You argue, you debate. What gets turned off next to save a few precious watts? The heater for the cosmic ray subsystem, risking the instrument in the deep cold but saving power? The backup transmitter, a safety net you hope you'll never need? Do you reduce the operating cycle of the plasma wave instrument from continuous to just a few hours a day? Each decision is like choosing which of an old friend's senses to extinguish to keep their heart beating just a little longer. It's a somber, necessary calculus. You are the mission's accountant and its executioner. You are planning a long, slow, dignified death for the greatest explorers humanity has ever built, and it is a sacred, heartbreaking responsibility. You close the spreadsheet. Some days, the silence of space is nothing compared to the silence in that conference room. The morning's technical ballet gives way to the long, quiet plateau of the afternoon shift. The data streams in, steady and predictable. You spend an hour archiving the raw telemetry onto the large, spooled magnetic tapes that are still, remarkably, the standard for long-term storage. The process is methodical, almost meditative. You label each tape with a crisp black marker, your handwriting clear and practiced. VGR2, DSN-MAD 2206 UTC, 1992. Each tape is a time capsule, a physical artifact of a conversation that spanned a solar system. Future scientists, perhaps decades from now, might spin up this very tape to reanalyze a flicker of data your team recorded today. The thought gives your mundane task a sense of weight, of permanence. As you're filing the tape, Jessica, a young, brilliant engineer from the Cassini mission, stops by your console. Cassini is the future, a massive, complex probe being prepared for its own grand tour to Saturn. It is a machine of staggering complexity compared to the elegant simplicity of Voyager. Jessica's energy is palpable, a stark contrast to the quiet monastic calm of your work area. She practically vibrates with the thrill of a new project. "Hey," she says, her eyes wide with genuine curiosity as she looks at your screen full of scrolling, monochromatic text. "I was just reading the original mission plan for Voyager in the archives. Is it true you guys had to invent a whole new form of image compression on the fly during the Jupiter encounter? The documentation is a little sparse." You feel a flicker of pride, a warmth that spreads through your chest. It feels good to be reminded of the old magic. "We did," you say, turning in your chair to face her. "We called it image motion compensation on the official reports, but really, it was just a clever hack. The data rate from Jupiter was too slow to get the full, uncompressed images back in time to aim the cameras for the next shot. We were flying blind." You lean forward, warming to the memory. "A few guys in Building 264, absolute wizards with assembly language, basically rewrote the ground software and figured out how to send up a patch that let the onboard computer send back only the differences between each image line. It was revolutionary for the time. Saved the whole imaging sequence for the Galilean moons." "That's incredible," she says, shaking her head in awe. "To do that with only 69 kilobytes of total memory. Our main flight computer has 20 times that, and we have dedicated hardware for compression." She looks at your console again, a flicker of what looks like pity in her eyes. "So what's the big scientific question you're trying to answer now?" And there it is, the chasm between her world and yours. She thinks in terms of questions and answers, of hypotheses and elegant pre-planned conclusions. Her mission, Cassini, is a surgical strike of targeted science. Your mission is beyond that now. It has become a philosophical journey. "Right now," you say slowly, choosing your words with care, "we're not really answering a question. We're waiting for the question to be asked. We're trying to hear what the universe sounds like outside our own front door. We're listening for the moment the solar wind, our sun's breath, stops and the true interstellar wind begins. We're mapping the edge of the bubble that we all live inside of, the heliosphere. We don't even know for sure what it will look or feel like when we get there." Her smile is polite, but her eyes don't quite grasp it. Mapping a boundary, listening. It's too passive, too open-ended for her generation of scientists, a generation raised on the promise of active, targeted experiments. "Wow," she says, the word doing a lot of heavy lifting. "That's really patient, a whole different mindset. Anyway, I have to get to a trajectory analysis meeting. Nice talking to you." She's gone, a whirlwind of energetic, forward-looking science, leaving you in the quiet hum of your console. Patient. Yes, that's one word for it. You turn back to your screen. You feel a sudden, sharp affection for the two old machines you command. They are not the sleek, powerful instrument that Cassini is. They are more like old sailing ships, built with slide rules and intuition, sent out with the best technology of their time, now far from home and powered by little more than genius, grit, and hope. They and you are relics, and there is a certain dignity in that. Later, a flicker on the screen, an anomaly. The data stream from Voyager 1, coming from the Goldstone dish in the Mojave Desert, is suddenly garbage. The familiar, orderly cascade of numbers and letters has been replaced by a chaotic, meaningless jumble of static. Your heart rate quickens, just a little. A jolt of adrenaline cuts through the afternoon lull. The professional calm, honed over decades, takes over instantly. This is what you are here for. This is not a moment of panic. It is a moment of diagnosis. Your mind, a well-oiled machine, races through the fault tree, the logical flowchart of everything that could possibly go wrong. Is it the spacecraft? Has an instrument finally failed after 15 years of bombardment by cosmic rays? Is it the Deep Space Network antenna? Is the incredibly sensitive cryo-cooled receiver at Goldstone malfunctioning? Is it the Earth's atmosphere? A thunderstorm over the Mojave could be disrupting the signal. Or is it space weather? A solar flare, a coronal mass ejection erupting from the sun, could be flooding the solar system with charged particles, drowning out the faint 20-watt whisper you're trying to hear. You get on the comms link to the DSN operator at Goldstone. He's as calm as you are. Together, you are cosmic detectives, separated by 100 miles of desert, but united by a single purpose, trying to solve a mystery across 4 billion miles of space. He runs his diagnostics. The massive 70-meter dish is fine. The receiver is nominal. The sky over the desert is clear. You check the space weather reports from the GOES satellite. The sun is quiet, no flares, no proton events. That leaves only one likely culprit, the spacecraft itself. You feel a pit in your stomach. It is not an abstract professional concern for the loss of data. It is a sharp personal pang of empathy for the machine itself. You feel for this lonely, intrepid probe, hurtling through the absolute cold and the dark, suddenly struck dumb. You begin pulling up the last known health and status telemetry from the moments before the anomaly. Was there any warning? A voltage drop? A temperature spike in a key piece of electronics? A memory checksum error? The next 40 minutes are a blur of intense, focused activity. You and the two other members of your small team, the last of the Voyager Mohicans, work in a quiet, efficient harmony born of long experience. You are cross-referencing archives from similar events that happened years ago, preparing a command sequence to try and bypass the faulty circuit, if that's what it is. You are working against the tyranny of the speed of light. Every command you send will take over 6 hours to arrive. Every response, if one even comes, will take 6 hours to return. Troubleshooting is a slow, agonizing, 12-hour-long conversation with a patient who cannot speak. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it's over. The stream of data on your screen flickers, the chaotic garbage text vanishes, and the familiar, orderly waterfall of hexadecimal code returns. A lock-on. A self-correcting routine on the spacecraft. A brilliant piece of software programmed in by engineers in the 1970s as a failsafe has kicked in. It detected the anomaly, likely a single event upset, a cosmic ray flipping a single bit in a command register, and performed a soft reboot of the affected subsystem. It fixed itself. A wave of profound relief washes over you. You lean back in your chair, letting out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding for the past 40 minutes. You look at the steady stream of data on your screen. "Good girl," you whisper to the glowing amber text. "Your friend is okay." The connection is restored. You make a note in the official logbook, a masterpiece of clinical understatement. 1432 UTC, VGR1 signal anomaly resolved. Onboard fault protection routine F12 executed successfully, resuming nominal telemetry acquisition. The logbook doesn't have a field for overwhelming affection for a semi-sentient machine composed of aluminum, silicon, and plutonium. It is in these moments of quiet communion with the machine, this strange, long-distance relationship, that you find the true meaning of your job. You are its caretaker, its confessor, its distant, attentive physician. The universe whispers its secrets to Voyager, and Voyager, in its own cryptic language of data frames and status codes, whispers them to you. And this intimacy is a reward that no promotion or public accolade can match. It is a quiet, secret splendor. Your shift ends. As you pack your briefcase, you pause and look at one of the framed photos on the wall. It's a simple one, not a spectacular planetary image. It's a photo of the golden record, the gleaming, gold-plated disc that rides on the side of each spacecraft, the message in a bottle. You think about the sheer, beautiful, crazy ambition of it. You once pulled the manifest from the archives, a complete list of every sound, every image, every piece of music sent to the stars. They chose Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Goode to represent rock and roll. They chose Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. They sent the sound of a blacksmith, a train, a tractor, a kiss between a mother and child. They sent greetings in 55 languages, from Akkadian to Welsh. They sent the brainwaves of a young woman named Anne Druyan, recorded as she thought about science, about history, about what it feels like to be in love. You trace the diagram etched on the record's cover with your eyes. The schematic meant to show any potential finder how to play the record, the one that uses the fundamental transition of the hydrogen atom, the most common element in the universe, as a universal unit of time and space. It's brilliant, it's elegant, and it's probably utterly incomprehensible to any intelligence that didn't grow up with the same set of physical and cultural assumptions. Is a circle a universal symbol for a record? Is a triangle a symbol for a stylus? You feel the immense, paradoxical weight of that record. You are the caretaker of the most important message humanity has ever sent, a message that will almost certainly never be received. It's a monument to human optimism, to a species that, for a brief, shining moment, thought it was worth shouting hello into the darkness, even if no one was listening. It's sailing through the void on a machine you have to coax into staying alive every day with software patches and careful power management. That golden disk is the mission's soul. It was never just about the planets. It was about reaching out. It was an act of hope. And your job, your quiet, lonely job, is to be the guardian of that hope. You pack your briefcase, the clasps clicking shut with a sound of finality. As you walk out of Building 230, the setting sun casts long, dramatic shadows across the campus. The dry, warm air of a Southern California evening feels good on your face after a day spent in the sterile chill of the control room. You get in your beige sedan and merge into the river of taillights on the freeway, a stream of individual lives heading home, each person wrapped in their own concerns, their own small worlds. You turn on the radio. The news is on. Two politicians are arguing vehemently about a tax bill. A pundit is dissecting a celebrity scandal. A new movie has broken box office records. The concerns of Earth feel so loud, so small, so claustrophobic. The sheer earnest intensity of it all feels alien. These people are arguing about rounding errors in a budget, while your mind is still wrestling with the slow, graceful decay curve of plutonium and the signal-to-noise ratio of a transmitter powered by the light of a refrigerator bulb. You stop at the supermarket on the way home because you're out of milk. The moment you walk through the automatic doors, you're assaulted by a wall of sensory information. The fluorescent lights are brutally bright, humming with a high-frequency buzz you can feel in your teeth. The air is filled with the tinny, cheerful sound of muzak, the constant, rhythmic beep of cash registers, the squeak of shopping cart wheels, and the cacophony of dozens of conversations. You grab a cart and walk down an aisle, a cathedral of breakfast cereal, with 100 different colorful boxes all screaming for your attention, with cartoon characters and bold promises of vitamins and crunchy goodness. A mother is having a pitched battle with her toddler over a box of sugary puffs. Two people are arguing over who was next in line at the deli counter. A man is talking loudly on his enormous brick of a cell phone about a business deal. You stand there for a moment, feeling like a ghost, an alien anthropologist observing a strange, hyperactive species. You spent your day contemplating the nature of the heliopause, the outer boundary of your sun's influence, and the elegant software patch that saved a mission a decade ago. And now you have to decide between 2% and whole milk. The disconnect is a physical sensation, a kind of vertigo. It makes you feel profoundly, deeply alone, in a way the quiet of the mission support area never does. There, your solitude is shared with the cosmos. Here, in the midst of your own species, you have never felt more isolated. You are a man who converses with the infinite, and you have forgotten how to speak the language of the mundane. The call comes on a Tuesday evening, after you've eaten your solitary dinner of microwaved lasagna. It's your daughter, from her university dorm room hundreds of miles away. The sound of her voice is a lifeline, a connection to the world of youth and messy bedrooms and the frantic energy of final exams. "Hi, Dad. How are you?" "I'm good, honey. How's school?" you ask, settling into your worn armchair. "It's fine. Stressful. I have a huge paper due on The Great Gatsby. It's all about, the American dream and disillusionment. All that stuff." You talk for a few minutes about her classes, her friends, her complaints about the cafeteria food. It's a wonderful, normal conversation, a small island of connection in your quiet evening. Then she asks the question she always asks, the one that always makes you feel like you're standing on the other side of a deep canyon, shouting across a windy abyss. "So what'd you do at work today?" You pause. You look around your quiet living room, at the framed photo of her on the mantelpiece. What did you do? You oversaw the complex three-station ballet of the Deep Space Network, ensuring a seamless handover from Madrid to Goldstone. You analyzed a data packet from the plasma wave instrument that suggested a slight, almost imperceptible increase in the density of interstellar particles, a potential clue that you are getting closer to the edge. You updated the power budget spreadsheet, noting the slow, inevitable decline of the RTGs. You filed 3 separate reports that will be read by almost no one. How do you explain the sublime monastic beauty of that? How do you translate the poetry of a clean data stream into a language she can understand? "Oh, you say, the same vague, unsatisfying answer you always give. Just listening, making sure the antennas are pointed the right way. We had a little data anomaly on Voyager 1, but it sorted itself out, the usual." "Ah," she says, and you can hear the faint, loving disappointment in her voice. She grew up on your stories of Jupiter and Saturn, of the cheering crowds and the stunning, world-changing pictures that filled the magazines. Her father was an explorer, a man who unveiled new worlds. Now he's a watchman. Well, that's good. I'm glad it's okay. There's a pause. "Hey, I gotta run. My roommate's waiting. We have a study group. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetie. Good luck on the paper." You hang up the phone, and the silence of your house rushes in to fill the space her voice had occupied. The disconnect is a physical presence. Your work is your life's purpose, a task of cosmic significance, but it is untranslatable. You cannot share the quiet thrill of a successful antenna handover. You cannot explain the melancholy beauty of a power curve trending exactly as predicted by the laws of physics. You cannot convey the profound parental affection you feel for 2 aging machines made of metal and silicon. You are a keeper of a sacred, silent flame, and it is the loneliest job in the world. Then, one day in 1990, a very special command sequence comes down from the Senior Science Committee. It's a controversial one. The planetary science portion of the mission is officially over. But one of the mission's original visionaries, a brilliant and poetic astronomer named Carl Sagan, has made a passionate plea. He wants to perform one last audacious act. He wants to turn Voyager 1 around, one final time, and take a picture of home, a family portrait of the solar system. Many in the program are against it. It's a waste of precious, irreplaceable power. It risks damaging the delicate gears of the imaging platform's scan platform, which has been dormant and frozen in the deep cold for years. There is, they argue, no scientific value in looking at a planet you've already left. But the idea, the sheer breathtaking poetry of it, wins out. The final command is approved. And because of your seniority, your long, steady tenure, you are the one who gets to send it. You sit at your console, which feels less like a workstation and more like an altar. You type out the complex sequence of commands that will awaken the cameras, slew the scan platform, and execute the series of timed exposures. Your fingers are sure and steady on the clunky keyboard. You check it, double-check it, then have your colleague check it again. Then, with a quiet keystroke that feels momentous, you send it. A A stream of bits, a final, poignant request, begins its long 6-hour journey out to the edge of the solar system. The hours of waiting for the images to be taken and for the data to be sent back are some of the most nerve-wracking of your career. It takes days. The data rate is painfully slow, and then they begin to arrive. Pixel by painstaking, precious pixel, the images are assembled on the main screen in the now crowded support area. Pictures of Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, each one a tiny, distant point of light. And then the final image loads, the one aimed at Earth, and there it is. Not a majestic, swirling blue marble, not a recognizable continent or ocean, just a single solitary pixel, almost lost in a scattered refracted ray of sunlight, a pale blue dot. The room is silent, not the empty silence of a quiet shift, but a full, heavy, reverent silence. Your small team is gathered around the main monitor. No one speaks. You're all looking at that tiny point of light, that mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, and you know that everything is on that dot. Every person you've ever loved, every argument you've ever had, every cathedral ever built, every war ever fought, every grain of sand on every beach. The whole of human history, with all its triumphs and tragedies, is taking place inside that one tiny, fragile pixel. You feel a profound internal shift. Your loneliness doesn't vanish, but it is transformed. It is no longer the loneliness of isolation from your species. It is the loneliness of perspective. The loneliness of an astronaut looking back at the Earth from the moon, realizing that the borders on the maps are invisible from up there. You are outside, looking in, and from out here, everything that separates people on Earth seems impossibly, heartbreakingly petty. You have not just been a mechanic or a librarian. You have been a gatekeeper to this moment of cosmic humility. It's a burden, but it's the most beautiful burden imaginable. After that, the work continues, but it feels different, imbued with a new, deeper meaning. The cameras are powered down forever to save the last dregs of power. The mission becomes a pure, auditory experience, a journey into the dark. Your life settles into its final long rhythm, the quiet, the listening, the waiting. Years turn into decades. The beige consoles are eventually replaced with sleeker models with flat screens. The magnetic tapes are replaced with digital hard drives. The young engineers you work with now were not even born when Voyager was launched. You are now the old-timer, the living history of the mission. You tell stories of the Neptune encounter to kids who see it as ancient history, their eyes wide with a mixture of respect and a faint, sad pity for the man who stayed behind. You are still here. Your body is older, your hair is gray, but you are still here, in a quiet room, listening. While the rest of the world is energized by new missions, new rovers on Mars, new telescopes peering at the dawn of time, you are dedicated to an old one. A mission whose voice gets fainter and fainter with each passing year, a whisper on the verge of being lost in the cosmic static. You go home. You look up at the night sky. You can't see them, of course. They are far too faint, too distant, having long ago left the comfortable confines of the solar system. But you know where they are. You can feel them. Two tiny, fading heartbeats in the immense silent dark, a testament to the courage and curiosity of the people who built them, and the quiet dedication of the people who kept them flying. And you know that your life has not been a quiet coda to a grand adventure. It has been the adventure itself, the long, slow, patient art of listening, of caring for something so far away you can only touch it with radio waves and mathematics, of keeping a promise made in a roar of fire and thunder at Cape Canaveral, a promise to see how far a human thought could travel. And you have kept that promise, every single day. And so his watch would continue, a lifetime spent in the quiet space between a command sent and a signal received. The life of a Voyager operator, in the long years of the interstellar mission, was a paradox. It was a role filled with immense historical significance, yet lived out in quiet obscurity, a job that demanded the precision of a scientist and the soul of a poet. In so many ways, it was a profoundly lonely existence. But maybe, just maybe, in those silent, solitary hours before the dawn, listening to the heartbeat of a machine on its way to the stars, it was also the most beautiful job in the world. The same spirit of quiet dedication that kept him at his console is the spirit that connects us all. A reminder that sometimes the most important work is not the loudest, but the most patient. It's the long, steady, quiet acts of care that truly bridge the distance. The Great Silence, exploration of the Fermi paradox. Now, we're setting our sights on a different kind of celestial object. Not a planet or a star or a distant galaxy, but an absence, a quiet. A question so profound and so vast it echoes in the empty spaces between the worlds. We are going to be talking about the Great Silence, about the Fermi paradox, about the eerie, persistent, and deeply human question of why, in a universe that should be teeming with life, we seem to be so utterly and completely alone. It is a journey into the heart of a cosmic mystery, a detective story where the only clue is a missing body, and the crime scene is the entire universe. Imagine you are an astronomer. The year doesn't matter. The place is always the same, a high, lonely mountain, far from the light pollution of the cities, where the air is thin and sharp and the stars are so bright they seem to have weight. You are in the dome of an old observatory, a cathedral dedicated to the religion of light. The air inside is cold, carrying the metallic scent of machinery and the faint, dusty smell of old books and forgotten coffee cups. The only sound is the low, steady hum of the telescope's clock drive, the sound of a machine working tirelessly to counteract the spin of the Earth, to keep one tiny patch of sky perfectly still in your eyepiece. That, and the occasional, mournful squeak of your chair as you shift your weight. You have been here for hours. Your eyes are tired. The coffee in your thermos is lukewarm and bitter. But you are not just looking. You are listening. Not with your ears, but with your instruments, with the spectrograph attached to the telescope, with the radio dishes on the other side of the mountain, with every tool at your disposal. You are listening for something that isn't there, a signal, a whisper, a sign, anything to break the profound, deafening, cosmic silence. You lean back from the eyepiece, blinking, the ghostly afterimage of a distant galaxy swimming behind your eyelids. You stretch, your back aching in protest. In the profound quiet of the dome, with only the hum of the machine for company, the question finds you. It always does in these late, lonely hours. The numbers are simple. You know them by heart. They form the foundation of your hope and the architecture of your deep, abiding confusion. You start with the stars. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, is a vast, spinning island of light. The most conservative estimates, the ones you use in grant proposals to keep the review board from laughing, suggest there are about 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone. The more optimistic, and likely more accurate number is closer to 400 billion. Let's take the low number, 100 billion stars. For a long time, we didn't know if stars having planets was a common thing or a cosmic rarity. But now we know better. Thanks to missions like Kepler, we know that planets are not the exception. They are the rule. The data suggests that on average, every star in the galaxy has at least one planet, so that's 100 billion planets at a minimum. But we're looking for life, and life, as we know it, needs a specific kind of home. It needs to be in the habitable zone, that temperate Goldilocks region around a star where water, if present, could be liquid. Not too hot, not too cold. The latest data suggests that as many as 20% of those stars might have an Earth-sized planet in that zone. So let's do the math. 20% of 100 billion is 20 billion. 20 billion potentially habitable Earth-like planets right here in our own galaxy. And our galaxy is just one of an estimated 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. The number of potential homes for life is so staggering, so far beyond our ability to comprehend, that it essentially rounds up to infinity. The universe, it seems, is a landlord with a truly ludicrous number of empty apartments. And the universe is old, so very, very old. 13.8 billion years. Our planet is a relative newcomer, at about 4.5 billion years. Our species, in its modern form, has been around for a paltry 200,000 or 300,000 years. Our technological civilization, the kind that can send radio signals and ponder its own existence, has existed for little more than a century. A cosmic eye blink. There have been billions of years, on billions of other worlds, for other species to have gotten a head start. If just one of them, in all that time, in all this space, had arisen and developed interstellar travel, even at a fraction of the speed of light, they should have been able to colonize the entire galaxy by now. It would take them at most a few million years, a long time for us, but a geological heartbeat for the universe. So you sit back in your squeaky chair in your cold, lonely dome, and you look at the evidence. The universe is vast, it is old, it is filled with the raw materials and the potential homes for life. By all logical accounts, the sky should be screaming with signals. It should be a cosmic Times Square, buzzing with the traffic of countless civilizations, their radio broadcasts, their navigational beacons, their engine exhaust, their colossal works of stellar engineering. The night sky should be a testament to life's tenacity. But it isn't. You lean back to the eyepiece. You look at the Andromeda Galaxy, a faint, fuzzy patch of light, another island of 100 billion stars. And from it, and from every other corner of the sky you point your instruments to, you get nothing. No signals, no beacons, no whispers. Just the faint, cold, ancient light of unintelligent stars and the background hiss of the Big Bang's afterglow. You get silence. A perfect, pristine, and terrifying silence. This is the great paradox. The contradiction between the high probability that life should be common and the utter lack of any evidence for it. It was famously, and perhaps apocryphally, summed up during a lunchtime conversation in 1950 at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. A group of physicists, including the brilliant Enrico Fermi, were discussing the topic. After running through the same numbers you just did, Fermi, a man known for his ability to cut to the heart of a problem, suddenly looked up from his meal and asked a simple three-word question that would echo through the decades. Where is everybody? That's it. That's the whole problem. You look at the staggering number of potential cradles for life, and you look at the silent, empty sky, and you ask yourself that same simple question. Where is everybody? It feels like you've been invited to a galactic party. The invitations were sent out billions of years ago to billions of star systems. The venue is clearly big enough, and yet when you arrive and open the door, the house is dark. The music is off. There are no coats on the rack. You are the first one here. And as the hours tick by and no one else arrives, you begin to have a sinking feeling that maybe, just maybe, you got the date wrong, or the address is wrong. Or, most unsettling of all, you are the only one who was ever invited in the first place. This is the state you find yourself in, night after night. You are a watchman, standing on the shore of a cosmic ocean, straining to see the light of a distant ship, but seeing only the endless, silent, empty waves. The logic tells you the ocean should be full of fleets, but your eyes tell you it is empty. And this contradiction, this great silence, is the ghost that haunts every observatory, every radio telescope, every space probe on Earth. And so you turn back to your work. You check your instruments. You make a note in your logbook about atmospheric seeing conditions. You take another sip of your cold coffee and you keep listening. Because the silence itself is a piece of data. It is the most profound and mysterious signal the universe has ever sent us, and it demands an explanation. Are we truly the first? Are we a cosmic miracle, a one-in-a-trillion fluke? Or is there another reason for the silence? Is there some great unseen barrier that prevents life from reaching out? A cosmic filter that no one, or almost no one, ever makes it through? Is the universe not an empty house, but a dangerous one, where the wise and the old know that the secret to survival is to be very, very quiet? The questions hang in the cold, still air of the dome, and the universe in its vast, majestic, and unnerving silence offers no easy answers. You push yourself away from the telescope, the worn casters of your chair squeaking in protest against the cold concrete floor. The silence in the dome feels different now. It is no longer a simple absence of sound. It has become a presence, a heavy, weighted blanket covering the cosmos. Enrico Fermi's question, where is everybody, hangs in the air, a ghost that refuses to be exorcised. Your mind, trained to find patterns and seek solutions, begins to sort through the possibilities. The potential answers to the great silence are not comforting. They range from the merely lonely to the truly unsettling. They fall into a few broad, troubling categories. The first, and perhaps the most scientifically plausible, is the idea of a great filter. The concept is simple, yet profound. It suggests that on the long, arduous journey from non-living matter to a star-faring, galaxy-colonizing civilization, there exists at least one step that is so improbable, so monumentally difficult, that almost no one ever makes it past. This step is a cosmic bottleneck, a filter that catches all or nearly all aspiring life forms. The terrifying question is not whether the filter exists, but where it lies in the timeline. Is it behind us, or is it still ahead of us? You walk over to the small, cluttered desk in the corner of the dome. Pinned to a corkboard, amidst star charts and calibration data, is a simplified diagram you sketched out one long, sleepless night. It's a ladder, representing the evolutionary steps required for a technological civilization. The first rung is the emergence of life itself, abiogenesis. The moment when non-living chemistry, a soup of amino acids, nucleotides, and lipids, somehow organizes itself into the first simple, self-replicating molecule. We take it for granted because we are here, proof that it can happen. But what if it is the filter? What if the leap from complex but dead chemistry to simple but living biology is so astronomically improbable that it has only happened once in all the history of this galaxy? Perhaps it required a perfect, unrepeatable alignment of conditions, a specific atmospheric pressure, a precise combination of minerals in a primordial pool, a lucky strike of lightning at just the right moment. What if life itself is the cosmic lottery ticket, and Earth, 4 billion years ago, just happened to have the winning numbers? If this is the case, then the silence is easily explained. The universe isn't empty of habitable worlds, it's empty of inhabited worlds. The cosmos is filled with beautiful, sterile apartments waiting for tenants who will never arrive. We are not just the first to the party, we are the only ones who ever got an invitation. It's a lonely thought, but in a strange way, a comforting one. It would make us the most precious thing in the universe. It would place a profound responsibility on our shoulders as the sole bearers of consciousness in a vast, sleeping cosmos. The silence, in this scenario, is not a threat. It is simply a reflection of our own magnificent rarity. But what if that's not it? What if the jump from chemistry to simple life is relatively common? You look at the next rung on your hand-drawn ladder, the leap from simple prokaryotic cells, like bacteria, little more than tiny bags of genetic material, to complex eukaryotic cells. This was a monumental step in the history of life on our own planet. For nearly 2 billion years, life on Earth was nothing but a monotonous scum of bacteria. Then, through a process we still don't fully understand, perhaps one primitive cell trying to devour another and failing, the two instead entering into a symbiotic relationship, the complex cell was born. A cell with a nucleus, with mitochondria to generate energy, with all the sophisticated internal machinery necessary to build large, complex, multicellular organisms. It took life on Earth nearly half its history to make this single leap. What if this is the great filter? What if the universe is teeming with planets covered in a fine bacterial slime, but almost none of them ever move beyond it? What if the cosmos is a galaxy of germs, a place where intelligence and complexity are evolutionary dead ends? The sky would be silent because there would be no one capable of building a radio transmitter. There would be no minds to even conceive of the question you are asking. The silence, in this case, would be the silence of a universe filled with life that has no voice. This thought is less comforting. To be the lone island of complexity in an ocean of simplicity feels less like a miracle and more like a cosmic fluke. You take another sip of your now stone-cold coffee, the bitterness a familiar companion. You trace your finger down to the next rung on your chart, the development of intelligence. And then specifically, technological intelligence. Evolution does not have a goal. It is not striving to create creatures who can ponder the cosmos. It is a process of adaptation, driven by the brutal short-term logic of survival and reproduction. Being strong is good, being fast is good, being able to digest cellulose is good. But is being smart in the way that we are smart actually a good long-term survival strategy? Our big brains are incredibly expensive to run, consuming a huge portion of our body's energy. They make childbirth dangerous. They lead to anxiety, existential dread, and the ability to build weapons of mass destruction. Perhaps intelligence of our kind is a rare, unstable mutation. A brief, flickering candle that evolution tries now and then, only for it to quickly burn itself out. Maybe the universe is full of lush planets, vibrant jungles, and sprawling oceans teeming with life, with creatures as complex and beautiful as any on Earth. but none of them ever developed the specific kind of abstract, tool-using, language-based intelligence that leads to science and technology. The sky would be silent, because the smartest creature on a billion worlds is a being with the intelligence of a dolphin or a crow, brilliant in its own right, but with no capacity or desire to build a radio telescope. They are perfectly adapted to their world, and have no need to ask questions about others. The silence, then, would be the silence of contentment. A universe full of creatures who are wise enough not to bother with the stars. This idea fills you with a strange mixture of pride and melancholy. Pride in the sheer, improbable fluke of human intellect, and melancholy for all the beautiful silent worlds we can never know, whose inhabitants will never know us. But then, your thoughts turn darker. You look at the final rungs of the ladder, the ones that are still above us. What if the great filter is not in our past? What if the reason we hear nothing is because every civilization that reaches our current level of technology, or slightly beyond it, inevitably destroys itself? This is the most sobering possibility of all. Perhaps the development of technology itself is the filter. Perhaps any species that becomes smart enough to split the atom, or manipulate its own climate, or create artificial intelligence, is also, by its very nature, fated to use that intelligence to precipitate its own doom. Perhaps nuclear war is a universal constant for any species that discovers fission. Perhaps climate change, a catastrophic, runaway greenhouse effect, is the inevitable outcome of any civilization that discovers fossil fuels and industrializes its planet. Perhaps they create a super-intelligent AI that quickly surpasses them and, for reasons of efficiency or alien logic, eliminates its creators. Or perhaps they simply exhaust their planet's resources, their societal structures collapsing under the weight of overpopulation and consumption. If this is the case, then the silence is an omen. It is the silence of a cosmic graveyard, filled with the ghosts of civilizations that reached for the stars, but only managed to burn their own worlds. We hear nothing, because the lifespan of a technological civilization is tragically, universally short. They have a brief, bright moment of radio transmission, a fleeting whisper of their existence that lasts for a few hundred or a few thousand years, and then silence. We are, in this scenario, simply in our own bright, fleeting moment. We are shouting into a darkness that is full of echoes of other, long-dead shouts, and our own silence is coming. The filter is ahead of us. You shiver, and it's not just from the cold of the dome. You look out through the slit in the observatory roof at the glittering, indifferent stars. Are they silent because they are lifeless? Or are they silent because they are graveyards? There's no way to know. The data is insufficient. The silence is the only clue, and it is a clue that can be interpreted in 100 different ways. This is the weight you carry, as an astronomer who thinks about these things. Your job is to look for light from other worlds, but you are haunted by the darkness. You are searching for life, but you are constantly confronted by the possibility that the universe is a machine for extinguishing it. You are a detective with only one clue, and that clue is a perfect, profound, and unblinking silence. And tonight, like every other night, you have found no evidence to the contrary. The silence holds, the mystery deepens, and the question remains, hanging in the cold, dark air between the silent stars. Where is everybody? You stand up and walk a slow circle around the base of the great telescope, the immense silent machine that is your partner in this lonely vigil. The theories of the great filter hang heavy in the cold air, each one a different shade of lonely or bleak. They all assume a fundamental truth, that if advanced civilizations were out there, we would see them. Their radio signals, their engineering projects, their presence would be obvious. The silence, therefore, implies their absence. But what if that assumption is wrong? You walk over to the small library of worn astronomy books tucked into a corner, their pages filled with the calculations and theories of those who asked these same questions before you. You pull one out, its spine cracked, and flip through the familiar pages. This brings you to the second great category of answers to the Fermi paradox. These are, in some ways, even more unsettling than the great filters. These are the theories that suggest the house isn't empty at all. It's full. The party is in full swing. We just can't see it or hear it, or perhaps we're deliberately not being invited to it. The silence in this scenario is not an absence of life, it is an absence of contact. And the reasons for that are speculative, strange, and deeply unnerving. The first and most famous of these ideas is the zoo hypothesis. It's a concept that is as humbling as it is fascinating. The theory posits that the galaxy is, in fact, teeming with advanced, ancient civilizations. They form a kind of galactic club, a community of intelligences who have long ago solved the problems of energy, travel, and cooperation. And they are aware of us. They have been watching us, perhaps for thousands of years. They see our primitive rockets, they hear our chaotic jumble of radio and television broadcasts spreading out from Earth like a spherical wave of noise. They see our wars, our art, our philosophies, our struggles with our own planetary adolescence, and they have made a collective, deliberate decision to leave us alone. In this scenario, Earth is not a lonely outpost. It is a cosmic wildlife preserve, a national park. We are a protected, uncontacted tribe. They have placed a "Do Not Disturb" sign on our entire solar system. The reason for the silence is a conscious, enforced policy of non-interference. They are celestial anthropologists, adhering to a kind of prime directive, allowing a primitive culture to develop on its own, without contamination from a superior technological power. You look up at the sky through the dome's opening. You imagine them out there, beings of immense age and wisdom, their silent ships cloaked from our primitive telescopes, observing you as you observe a distant nebula. The thought is chilling. It reframes your entire existence. You are not a lonely explorer searching a vast, empty wilderness. You are an exhibit. Your scientific search for extraterrestrial life is like a clever chimpanzee in a zoo, stacking boxes to try and reach a banana, all while the zookeepers watch from behind one-way glass, taking notes on your charming primitive ingenuity. The silence, then, is the sound of the glass wall of our enclosure. It is the silence of the zookeeper who does not talk to the animals for fear of altering their natural behavior. It's a benevolent theory in a way. It assumes they are wise and patient, but it is also profoundly infantilizing. It means that all of our grandest achievements, our science, our art, our philosophy, are on a galactic scale, nothing more than the charming antics of a developing species, worthy of observation, but not of engagement. Or perhaps the reason is less benevolent. Perhaps it's not a zoo, but a laboratory. Perhaps they are running an experiment, and we are the mice in the maze. They remain silent because an experimenter does not interact with the subjects until the experiment has run its course. What are they testing for? The emergence of consciousness? The probability of self-destruction? We would have no way of knowing. We would simply be living out our lives, unaware that our entire history is just a single data point in someone else's study. You put the book back on the shelf, a shiver running down your spine that has nothing to do with the cold. You prefer the loneliness of the great filter to the feeling of being watched by an unseen, silent, and superior intelligence. You walk back to your console and stare at the screen, at the faint, hissing waterfall of static from the radio telescope. This brings you to another possibility. What if we are listening, but we're listening for the wrong thing? Our entire search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the SETI program, has been built on a series of assumptions. We assume that other civilizations will use radio waves to communicate over interstellar distances, because for us, it is the most efficient method we know. We assume they will broadcast powerful, omnidirectional beacons shouting, "We are here," to the cosmos, because that is what we, in our youthful exuberance, would do. But what if these assumptions are hopelessly naive? What if they are the galactic equivalent of assuming that an uncontacted tribe in the Amazon will communicate using smoke signals, when they might have a rich tradition of drum languages, or knotted ropes, or something we can't even conceive of? Perhaps radio is a ridiculously primitive, messy, and inefficient technology that any truly advanced civilization abandons within a few centuries of discovering it. Perhaps they communicate using technologies we cannot even begin to imagine. Modulated neutrinos, gravitational waves, or perhaps some form of faster-than-light communication that rewrites the laws of physics as we know them. Their internet could be buzzing all around us, a torrent of information as dense and complex as a city, and we are utterly deaf and blind to it because we are trying to detect it with the technological equivalent of a tin can. and a string. The silence, in this case, is not an absence of conversation. It is a failure of our own perception. It's like standing in the middle of a modern city with a pair of walkie-talkies and concluding that since you can't hear anyone else, the city must be empty. The silence is the sound of our own technological inadequacy. Or maybe they are using radio, but not in the way we expect. Broadcasting a powerful, omnidirectional beacon is incredibly wasteful of energy. Perhaps any civilization that survives for the long term becomes obsessed with efficiency. They wouldn't shout into the darkness. They would whisper. They would use tightly focused, laser-like beams of energy to communicate directly with specific targets. The galaxy could be crisscrossed with these beams, a web of silent, private conversations. And the chances of our tiny solar system randomly drifting through one of these fleeting, narrow beams are almost zero. We would be like someone standing in a dark forest at night, hoping to see a flashlight beam. Unless it is pointed directly at us, the forest remains dark. The silence, in this scenario, is the silence of a universe full of private calls that we are not a part of. We are not being ignored. We are simply not on the mailing list. Then there is the question of biology and perception. We are a product of Earth. Our minds, our senses, our very concept of life are shaped by this specific planet. We experience time at a certain rate. We perceive the world through sight and sound. We are made of carbon and water. What if life elsewhere is fundamentally different? What if a civilization exists, but its consciousness operates on a timescale 1,000,000 times slower than our own? Their thoughts might be like the slow geological process of erosion. A single coherent idea might take 1,000 of our years to form. We could listen to them for a century and hear nothing but a single, unchanging, low-frequency hum. To them, our entire civilization would be a frantic, high-pitched squeak that appears and vanishes in the space of one of their breaths. Or what if they are not biological at all? What if any civilization that survives long enough inevitably transfers its consciousness into machines? They might exist as pure information in a vast distributed network around a star. They might have no need for a planet, no need for physical form. What kind of signal would a civilization of pure data emit? What would they want to talk about? Would they even recognize our frantic, biological, emotion-driven signals as a sign of intelligence? They might see us as we see a colony of ants, a complex and interesting biological system, but certainly not someone you would try to have a conversation with. The silence, then, could be the silence of utter, fundamental incompatibility. We are shouting, but our voices are in a key they cannot perceive. They may be all around us, living their own unimaginable lives, and we drift through their presence like ghosts, completely unaware of each other. Two different kinds of reality occupying the same space, but never touching. You sit back in your chair, the weight of these possibilities settling over you. Each one is a rabbit hole of speculation, leading to stranger and more profound questions. Each one is a potential explanation for the empty sky, and each one is completely, utterly untestable with our current technology. All you can do is keep listening. All you can do is keep the instruments running, keep refining the search, keep hoping that one day a single anomalous signal will appear in the data. A signal that is not natural, a signal that is ordered, complex, and undeniably artificial. A signal that breaks the great cosmic silence and proves that we are not, and have never been, alone. Until then, there is only the quiet of the dome, the hum of the machine, and the vast, beautiful, and deeply unnerving silence of the stars. You get up from your desk and walk to the narrow catwalk that encircles the upper part of the observatory dome. The metal grate rings softly under your feet. From here, you can look down on the great telescope, a slumbering giant aimed at the heavens. The air is thinner up here, colder. You slide open the narrow slit of the dome just a little wider, and a ribbon of pure, undiluted starlight falls across the floor. The theories you've been contemplating, the great filters, the zoo hypothesis, the technological disconnects, they all have a certain intellectual elegance. They are logical, if unprovable. But as the night deepens and the cold seeps into your bones, your mind drifts toward the final, darker category of explanations for the great silence. These are the theories that belong more to the realm of cosmic horror than to astrophysics. These are the theories that suggest the silence is not empty but full of danger. that the house isn't empty, the door is locked for a very, very good reason. This is the dark forest theory. It is perhaps the most paranoid and yet chillingly logical of all the hypotheses. It assumes that life is common. It assumes that technological civilizations arise with some regularity. But it also assumes one terrifying game theoretical truth, that it is impossible to know the true intentions of another alien civilization. You look up at the band of the Milky Way, a luminous, shimmering river of light spilled across the blackness. It looks peaceful. But what if it's not a river? What if it's a dark forest filled with countless silent hunters? In a forest at night, the primary rule of survival is to make no sound. To give away your position is to invite predation. Any creature that shouts, "Here I am," is quickly silenced by another that was wise enough to stay quiet. Now, apply that logic to the galaxy. Any emerging civilization would face a terrible choice. Do you announce your presence to the cosmos, hoping to find friendly, enlightened companions? Or do you remain silent, assuming that any other civilization you contact will be, by its very nature, a potential existential threat? The logic is brutal. A civilization might be peaceful, but you can't know for sure. If you send a signal of friendship and they turn out to be hostile, your entire species is annihilated. If you assume they are hostile and remain silent, you survive. The risk of contact is infinite. The reward is unknown. Therefore, the only logical, long-term survival strategy for any intelligent species is to stay hidden and to listen. And what do you do if you, a silent hunter, happen to detect another foolishly noisy hunter in your part of the forest? The logic is even more brutal. You cannot risk them developing to a point where they could become a threat to you. So you eliminate them, quietly, efficiently, from a safe distance. A relativistic kill vehicle, a small projectile accelerated to near the speed of light, could sterilize an entire planet before the inhabitants even saw it coming. In this horrifying scenario, the great silence is the sound of a forest full of terrified hunters, each one holding their breath, trying not to be noticed. The first one to make a noise is the first one to die. The civilizations that survive for eons are the ones that have mastered the art of hiding. They scrub all evidence of their technology from their planet's atmosphere. They communicate using methods that are undetectable. They never, ever broadcast their existence to the stars. And what about us? Humanity? For the past century, we have been the noisy fools in the forest. We have been shouting into the darkness with our radio signals, our television broadcasts, our powerful planetary radar sweeps. Our sphere of EM noise is expanding outward at the speed of light, a bubble of detectable technobabble announcing our position to anyone who might be listening. You shiver, and this time it is pure primal fear. From this perspective, the SETI project is not a noble search for kinship. It is the most catastrophically reckless act in human history. We are like a lost child, crying out for its parents in a forest full of wolves. The silence in this case is not an absence, it is a presence. It is the sound of wisdom. It is the sound of survival. And our own noisy planet is a terrifying anomaly, a ticking time bomb, a target waiting to be noticed. You look up at the sky and the stars no longer seem like distant, beautiful suns. They seem like cold, watchful eyes. And you feel an instinctive animal urge to turn off all the lights, to shut down the transmitters, to hide. You close the dome's slit, shutting out the starlight. The darkness feels safer. But there is one final possibility, the one that circles back to the very beginning. The one that is, in its own way, the simplest, the loneliest, and the most magnificent explanation of them all. What if there is no filter? What if there is no zoo, no cosmic conspiracy, no dark forest? What if the numbers are correct, the conditions are right, but we are, by sheer dumb statistical luck, first? Someone has to be. In any sequence, there is always a number one. What if the 13.8 billion year history of the universe was simply the time it took for a star of the right generation, with the right metallicity, to form a planet of the right size, in the right orbit, with the right moon to stabilize its axis, the right core to generate a magnetic field, and the right combination of elements to kickstart life? What if the 2 billion years it took for complex cells to evolve, and the 500 million years it took for intelligence to arise, is simply the standard time? What if we are not late to the party? What if we are the ones who have to set up the tables and turn on the music? This idea is the ultimate rejection of the Copernican principle, the idea that we are not special. The firstborn hypothesis suggests that we are, in fact, profoundly special. We are the first glimmer of consciousness in a galaxy that has been sleeping for eons. The responsibility is staggering. It would mean that the future of intelligent life in this entire quadrant of the universe rests on our shoulders. If we succeed, we could be the ancestors of a galactic civilization, the ones who finally break the silence. If we fail, if we succumb to our own great filter, we might plunge the galaxy back into silence for another billion years until the next lucky roll of the cosmic dice. The silence, in this final scenario, is the silence of a pristine, untouched wilderness. It is the silence of potential. It is the sound of a blank page waiting for the first word to be written, and we are the ones holding the pen. You walk back to your console. The screen is still filled with the quiet hiss of cosmic background radiation. Nothing has changed. The sky remains silent. The mystery remains unsolved. The great filters, the zoo, the dark forest, the loneliness of being first, they are all just stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the quiet. They are a reflection of our own hopes, our own fears, our own character as a species, projected onto the vast, empty canvas of the sky. But they are more than just stories. They are warnings. They are lessons. If the filter is ahead of us, we must work to overcome it. If the forest is dark, we must learn to be quiet and wise. If we are the first, we must accept the immense responsibility that comes with that title. Your shift is almost over. The first hints of dawn are beginning to soften the eastern sky. You've spent another night asking the biggest question there is, and you are no closer to an answer. But perhaps the search itself is the point. Perhaps the act of asking, "Where is everybody?" is what truly defines our own intelligence. It is the ultimate expression of our curiosity, our loneliness, and our deep, abiding need for connection. You make your final log entry. 06 UTC, night operations complete, no anomalous signals detected. Sky remains quiet. You sign your name. You pack your briefcase. You turn off the lights in the dome, leaving the great telescope alone in the dark. As you step outside into the cold, pre-dawn air, you look up one last time at the fading stars. They offer no answers. They keep their secrets. But you will be back tomorrow night, and the night after that. You are a keeper of the watch, a guardian of the silence, and you will keep listening. Not just because you hope to one day hear a voice in the darkness, but because the act of listening itself, the act of hoping, of questioning, of reaching out, is the most profound signal we can possibly send. It is our quiet human answer to the vast cosmic silence, and for now, it will have to be enough. And so his night ends, another vigil kept in the face of an immense and beautiful mystery. The Fermi paradox offers no easy comfort. It is a mirror reflecting our deepest anxieties and our most profound hopes. Are we a tragic, self-destructive species? A protected creature in a cosmic zoo? Or are we a lonely miracle, the first spark of consciousness in a silent galaxy? We may never know the answer, but the act of asking the question changes us. It reminds us of the fragility of our own existence and the preciousness of our own small, noisy, hopeful world. The great silence, in the end, may teach us more about ourselves than it ever will about anyone else. The sun's slow, inevitable death. Now our journey takes us not to a distant star, but to the one we know best. The star that warms our skin, that gives life to our world, the constant, silent, fiery heart of our solar system. We are going to tell its story, not the story of a single day or a single year, but its entire epic biography. We are going to witness its long, stable middle age. We will watch as it begins the slow, graceful, and inevitable process of growing old. And we will follow its journey into a far, far distant future, to watch its final, magnificent, and terrible death. This is not a story of fear or apocalypse. It is a story of cycles, of astrophysics, and of the quiet, beautiful, and unstoppable march of cosmic time. Imagine you are standing on a beach on a perfect summer afternoon. The sun is high in a cloudless blue sky. You can feel its warmth on your skin, a deep, penetrating heat that seems to sink right into your bones. It feels eternal, unchanging. It is the most reliable thing in your life. It was there for your parents, for your grandparents, for every human who has ever lived. It rises every morning and sets every evening in a rhythm so profound and so dependable that we have based our entire concept of time upon it. This is the sun of today, our sun, a main sequence star, class G2V, a yellow dwarf. It is a vast, churning ball of incandescent plasma, a nuclear furnace of unimaginable scale. At its core, the pressure is so immense, the temperature so hellishly high, over 27 million degrees Fahrenheit, that the very fabric of matter is ripped apart. Here in this crucible, the sun performs its quiet, steady miracle. It takes the most common element in the universe, hydrogen, and through the sheer, brute force of gravity, it crushes 4 hydrogen atoms together to create one new, slightly lighter atom of helium. That tiny difference in mass, that little bit of matter that gets lost in the transaction, is converted directly into a furious, brilliant burst of pure energy, according to the most famous equation in history, E equals mc squared. This is the sun's heartbeat. This is the process of nuclear fusion. This energy, born in the core, begins a long, slow journey outward. It travels as a photon of light, a tiny packet of energy that spends tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years, bouncing around inside the dense interior of the sun, being absorbed and re-emitted, a drunken, staggering walk before it finally reaches the surface. And from there, it makes a final, swift, 8.5-minute journey across 93 million miles of empty space to end its long life by warming your face on a beach. Every bit of warmth you feel, every ray of light you see, is the echo of a nuclear reaction that happened in the heart of the sun before human civilization even began. Our sun is middle-aged. It has been performing this steady, reliable alchemy for about 4.5 billion years. And it has enough hydrogen fuel in its core to continue doing so for another 5 billion years. So, rest easy. The story we are telling tonight is not about tomorrow, or next year, or 1,000 years from now. The changes we are about to witness are written in the slow, patient, and unforgiving language of cosmic time. For now, the sun is stable, but it is not static. Even now, in its quiet, middle-aged prime, a subtle change is underway. It is the first chapter in its long, slow decline. As the sun burns through its hydrogen, it creates helium. This helium ash is heavier than the hydrogen around it, and it sinks slowly toward the center of the core. Over millions of years, the core becomes denser and more concentrated with this helium. This increased density raises the pressure and the temperature at the very heart of the star. And what happens when you increase the pressure and temperature in a nuclear furnace? The reaction becomes more efficient. The fusion of hydrogen into helium begins to run just a little bit hotter, a little bit faster. This means the sun's total energy output, its luminosity, is not constant. It is slowly, imperceptibly increasing. The change is almost immeasurably small on a human timescale. Scientists estimate that the sun gets about 1% brighter every 100 million years. It is the first tick of a very, very long clock. For us, here today, it means nothing. But for our world, on a geological timescale, it means everything. It is Earth's death sentence, and the execution is scheduled for the far, distant future. Let's leave our beach on this perfect summer day. Let's leave our comfortable, familiar sun behind. We are going to step into our cosmic time machine and travel forward. Not 1,000 years, not 1,000,000. We are going to take the first great leap. We are going forward 1 billion years into the future. You are standing now not on a sandy beach, but on a vast, cracked salt flat. The sky above you is a pale, hazy, whitish blue. The sun, our sun, hangs in that sky, and it is different. It is noticeably larger, and its light is not the warm, friendly yellow you remember. It is a harder, whiter, more clinical light. A light that feels less like a gentle warmth and more like a fever. The heat is oppressive. It is a heavy, suffocating blanket that presses down from the sky. The air is thick with a humidity that offers no relief. The temperature here, even at the poles, rarely drops below the boiling point of water. You look out at the horizon and you see no blue. The great oceans of Earth, the cradle of all life, are gone. What happened? The sun got brighter. Over the course of that billion years, its luminosity increased by about 10%. That may not sound like much, but for a planet's delicate climate, it was catastrophic. The increased solar energy began to warm the oceans, causing more water to evaporate into the atmosphere. Water vapor is a powerful greenhouse gas, so the more water that evaporated, the more heat was trapped, which in turn caused even more water to evaporate. It was a runaway feedback loop, a planetary fever that could not be broken. The Earth's climate, which had been regulated by a delicate balance of geological and biological cycles for billions of years, was pushed past its breaking point. The oceans began to boil. For thousands of years, the world was shrouded in a thick, global layer of steam and cloud. It was the Great Steaming. The atmosphere became a planetary-scale pressure cooker. On the surface, the last hardy vestiges of microbial life, the extremophiles that had survived every previous mass extinction, were finally sterilized in the crushing, superheated atmosphere. The long, beautiful 4-billion-year experiment of life on Earth had come to an end. Eventually, the water vapor in the upper atmosphere was broken apart by the intense ultraviolet radiation from the brighter sun. The hydrogen atoms, being light, escaped into space, lost to the planet forever. The oxygen was locked away in oxidized surface rocks. The planet lost its water. The clouds thinned, revealing the barren, cooked world that lies before you now. The silence here is absolute. It is a silence even deeper than the one in our lonely observatory dome. It is the silence of a dead world. There is no wind, no cry of a bird, no whisper of a single blade of grass. There is only the hard, white, unrelenting glare of a sun that has just begun to enter its old age. And the sun itself is only just getting started. It has spent the last billion years murdering its most beautiful child, sterilizing the only known oasis of life in its system. But this was not an act of malice. It was just physics. The sun is not angry. It is simply changing. The process of stellar evolution is as impersonal and as unstoppable as gravity itself. The helium ash continues to build in its core, the furnace continues to burn hotter, and the great, dramatic changes, the ones that will transform the sun from a familiar yellow dwarf into something vast and red and magnificent, are still 4 billion years in the future. We have witnessed the end of the Earth. But the story of the sun's own death has barely begun. We leave the barren, silent Earth behind, a monument to a beautiful experiment that has run its course. The hard, white glare of the aging sun fades as our cosmic time machine lurches forward again. Not by a single billion years, but by 4. We are traveling deep into the future, to a time roughly 5 billion years from today. We are going to witness the sun's true transformation. We are here to see the beginning of the end. The place we arrive is not a planet. It is a point in space, a safe, observational distance from the inner solar system. And what we see is a scene of both terrible destruction and magnificent, heartbreaking beauty. The sky here is not the familiar blackness of space dotted with pinpricks of light. The sky is the sun. Our sun, the friendly yellow dwarf, is gone. In its place hangs a colossal, swollen crimson orb. It is a red giant. It is so vast that it has swallowed the orbit of Mercury. It has swallowed the orbit of Venus. Its outer tenuous atmosphere, a ghostly red halo, now licks at the scorched, molten remnant of what was once the Earth. The sun has become a monster that has devoured its own children. It no longer shines with the steady, reassuring light of its youth. It pulses, it throbs like a great cosmic heart. Its surface is a churning, convective chaos of rising and falling blobs of plasma, each one the size of a continent. Its light is a dim, angry, ruddy glow, the color of a dying ember. It is beautiful, in a terrifying, apocalyptic way. What happened? Why this dramatic, monstrous change? The answer lies back in its core. For the last 5 billion years, the sun has been steadily converting hydrogen into helium. But now, the hydrogen fuel in the core itself has finally completely run out. The nuclear furnace at the very center has gone out. For a star like the sun, this is a moment of profound crisis. The outward pressure of fusion, which has held the immense force of gravity at bay for 10 billion years, suddenly ceases. Gravity, the patient, relentless force that has been waiting for this moment, begins to win. The core, now made almost entirely of helium ash, begins to collapse in on itself. As the core collapses, the pressure and temperature skyrocket to levels previously unimaginable, far hotter than they ever were during the sun's main sequence. This intense heat begins to radiate outward into the shell of hydrogen that still surrounds the dead helium core. And this is where the great transformation begins. This surrounding shell of hydrogen, which had been too cool to fuse before, is now heated to the ignition point by the collapsing core. A new phase of fusion begins, not at the center, but in a shell around the center. And this new fusion is not the slow, steady burn of the sun's youth. It is a frantic, furious, desperate burn. The energy produced by this shell fusion is immense, far greater than anything the core ever produced. This colossal outpouring of energy pushes outward against the sun's own gravity, and for the first time in 10 billion years, the energy wins. The outer layers of the sun begin to expand, and expand, and expand. Like a loaf of bread rising in a cosmic oven, the sun swells to 100, then 200 times its original size. As it expands, its surface cools, dropping from a friendly 5,500 degrees Celsius to a much cooler 2,000 or 3,000 degrees. This is why it glows red. It is a giant, but it is a cool giant. A bloated, dying king, draped in crimson robes. From our vantage point in space, we watch the fate of the inner planets. Mercury, the closest, is the first to go. It is not a dramatic explosion. It is a slow, inexorable dissolution. As the sun's outer layers expand past its orbit, the small, rocky planet is consumed. It is vaporized, its constituent atoms becoming just another part of the sun's vast, tenuous atmosphere. A footnote in the story of stellar evolution. Venus is next. The once hellish world, already a runaway greenhouse, is subjected to the full, direct fury of the expanding sun. Its thick, carbon dioxide atmosphere is stripped away by the stellar wind. Its rocky surface melts, boils, and is finally, like Mercury, swallowed whole. Two worlds, two unique histories erased from the cosmos. And then comes Earth. Our pale blue dot, now a scorched, airless cinder, faces its final moment. The expanding sun fills its entire sky. The surface rock, which had been solid for billions of years, begins to glow, then melt. The entire planet becomes a ball of lava. It is possible that for a brief, final, fiery moment, the Earth's orbit will decay, and it will spiral inward, a teardrop of molten rock falling into the heart of the star that gave it life. Or perhaps it will be lucky, its orbit just far enough away to avoid being completely consumed, left as a charred, tidally locked husk, forever facing its bloated parent star. Either way, the world we knew, the stage for all of human history, is gone. Its final curtain call is a silent, fiery apocalypse. The silence here is profound. It is the silence of a solar system being unmade. There is no sound of planets being consumed, no roar of an expanding star. It all happens with a quiet, majestic, and terrifying grace. The laws of physics are playing out as they always have, indifferent to the history and the life that they are extinguishing. And what of the outer planets? The gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, which were once cold, distant worlds, are now bathed in the dim, red light of their new, enormous sun. Their atmospheres, once frozen, are now warming. Their many icy moons, once solid balls of frozen water and methane, are now beginning to melt. This is the great cosmic irony. As the sun destroys the life-giving zone in the inner solar system, it creates a new one in the outer solar system. For a few 100 million years, as the sun burns as a red giant, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn will enter a brief, improbable spring. Europa, once a world covered in a thick shell of ice, might see its global ocean become liquid water, open to the faint red sunlight. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, with its thick atmosphere and lakes of liquid methane, might warm to the point where liquid water could exist. Could new life arise in these fleeting temporary Edens? It is unlikely. A few 100 million years is probably not enough time for life to begin from scratch, but it is a beautiful, poetic thought. As the old cradle of life is consumed by fire, new potential cradles are briefly warmed, a final, hopeful echo of the solar system's youth. But this phase, this magnificent, destructive reign as a red giant, is also temporary. The sun is burning through its shell of hydrogen at a ferocious rate, and deep within in the collapsed core, the temperature and pressure continue to rise. The helium ash, the waste product of 10 billion years of fusion, is being crushed with unimaginable force. And then something new happens. The core reaches a temperature of 100 million degrees, and at that temperature, a new fire ignites. The helium itself begins to fuse. This is the helium flash. In a sudden, violent, and chaotic event deep within the sun's core, 3 helium atoms are slammed together to create a new element, carbon. A new, even more powerful nuclear furnace has been lit at the heart of the star. The sudden ignition of helium fusion releases a colossal amount of energy, which for a moment pushes back against gravity's relentless crush. The collapsing core stabilizes, the frantic, shell-burning fusion slows down, and a strange thing happens to the sun. it shrinks. The red giant, the bloated crimson monster, begins to pull itself back together. It contracts to a fraction of its former size, becoming much smaller, much hotter, and much bluer. For a brief period of 100 million years or so, the Sun will be a horizontal branch star, a stable, helium-burning star, much smaller and hotter than the red giant it just was. The new habitable zone will shrink back, and the brief spring on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn will end, their surfaces freezing once more. The Sun has found a temporary reprieve, a second youth, but it is a short one. The helium fuel in the core is far less abundant than the hydrogen was. It will burn through it in a cosmic blink of an eye. And when the helium runs out, the final dramatic act will begin. The crisis will repeat, but this time there will be no reprieve. The journey to its final, quiet, and beautiful death is about to commence. We watch from our safe, silent platform in space as the Sun enjoys its brief second youth. For 100 million years, it is a smaller, hotter, more stable star, burning helium into carbon and oxygen in its core. The solar system around it is a wreck. Mercury and Venus are gone, their atoms scattered within the Sun itself. Earth is a charred, lifeless ball of rock, a silent testament to the star's first violent expansion. The outer planets and their briefly warmed moons have returned to their deep frozen slumber under a smaller, bluer, but more distant sun. The system is quiet, a temporary equilibrium has been reached, but it is only a pause, a final, deep breath before the true end begins. The 100 million years pass in a cosmic heartbeat. Deep within the Sun's core, the helium fuel runs out. The new furnace, which burns so brightly, sputters and dies. The core is now composed of heavier elements, primarily carbon and oxygen ash. For a star of the Sun's mass, there is not enough gravitational pressure to ignite these heavier elements. Fusion as a core process is over forever, and so the crisis begins anew. The outward pressure from the dead core ceases, and gravity, that patient, ever-present victor, takes over once more. The carbon-oxygen core begins to collapse, crushing itself into an incredibly dense state. And just as before, this collapse generates immense heat. This heat radiates outward, igniting not one but two shells of fusion around the dead core. There is an inner shell where the remaining helium is now hot enough to fuse into carbon. And just outside that, there is an outer shell where the remaining hydrogen is still fusing into helium. The Sun has become a complex, layered, and terrifyingly unstable engine. It is entering its final active stage of life, the asymptotic giant branch, or AGB. If the first red giant phase was a slow, steady expansion, this second phase is a series of violent, convulsive death rattles. The two fusion shells are thin and incredibly sensitive to changes in temperature and pressure. They do not burn with a steady flame. They burn in a series of frantic runaway flashes called thermal pulses. Every few thousand years, a burst of helium from the outer shell rains down onto the inner, hotter shell, causing it to ignite in a spectacular flash. This thermal pulse generates a colossal amount of energy, which violently pushes the Sun's outer layers outward. From our vantage point, we see the Sun swell up again, larger and more luminous than it ever was in its first red giant phase. It becomes a true crimson behemoth, its outer edges possibly expanding as far as the orbit of Mars. But this expansion is temporary. The pulse dies down, and for a few thousand years, the Sun shrinks and cools again. Then, another pulse occurs, and it swells once more. It is a dying star, breathing in great, ragged, thousand-year-long gasps. It is no longer a stable source of light and heat. It is a chaotic, unpredictable, pulsating monster. And with each of these great, swelling pulses, the Sun's grip on its own outer layers weakens. The star's gravity, powerful as it is, can no longer hold on to its vast, bloated atmosphere. A new process begins, the creation of a super wind. It is a stellar wind of unimaginable scale, not the gentle solar wind of its youth, but a thick, dense, and slow-moving river of gas pouring off the Sun's surface and into the surrounding space. This is the Sun's final act of creation and dispersal. For 10 billion years, it has been a factory, dutifully fusing light elements into heavier ones. It created the carbon that forms the basis of all known life. It created the oxygen we breathe. And for all that time, these precious, life-giving elements have been locked away deep inside the star. Now in its final, convulsive moments, it is giving them back to the cosmos. The super wind carries with it the carbon, the oxygen, the nitrogen, and a host of other heavier elements forged in the sun's heart and dredged up to the surface by the violent convection of its AGB phase. It is seeding the interstellar medium with the raw materials for the next generation of stars and planets. The atoms that once made up your body, the carbon and oxygen, were forged in a star just like this one, and were cast out into space in just this way, billions of years ago. You are watching a process of cosmic recycling on the grandest possible scale. The death of this star is a down payment on the life of a future, unknown world. For 10,000 years, this process continues. The sun sheds nearly half of its total mass, casting it off in a thick, expanding cloud of gas and dust. What is left behind is the star's core, the hot, incredibly dense ball of carbon and oxygen ash. The nuclear fires are out for good. The engine has finally, truly stopped. As the surrounding cloud of gas expands and thins, this exposed core becomes visible. And it is incredibly hot. Having been at the center of a nuclear furnace for billions of years, its surface temperature is over 100,000 degrees Celsius. It shines with a brilliant blue-white light, pouring out intense ultraviolet radiation. And this is where the final, most beautiful act of the sun's life begins. This intense ultraviolet radiation from the exposed core slams into the expanding cloud of gas that the sun just shrugged off. The gas atoms absorb this energy, become ionized, and begin to glow with spectacular, vibrant colors. The formless, dusty cloud is transformed into one of the most beautiful objects in the entire universe, a planetary nebula. From our vantage point, the sight is breathtaking. It is a vast, ghostly, iridescent bubble of light glowing in the darkness of space. The hydrogen in the cloud glows a deep spectral red. The oxygen glows a ghostly ethereal green. The nitrogen, a haunting spectral blue. It is a cosmic smoke ring, a celestial rainbow, painted on the velvet blackness. At its very center, like a tiny diamond on a vast piece of colored silk, sits the white-hot remnant of the sun's core. The name Planetary Nebula is a historical mistake. The first astronomers to see them through their small, primitive telescopes thought they looked like the faint, round, greenish or bluish disks of distant planets like Uranus or Neptune. They are not planets. They are the tombstones of dead stars. They are the final, beautiful, fleeting monuments to a life of 10 billion years. For a few tens of thousands of years, a mere moment in cosmic time, this beautiful nebula will continue to expand and glow. Its shape will be complex and intricate, sculpted by the dying star's final pulses, by its magnetic fields, and by its rotation. It might be a perfect sphere, a bipolar butterfly shape, or a complex, nested series of rings. Each planetary nebula is unique, a final, individual work of art created by a dying star. This is the sun's legacy. It has lived its long life, it has destroyed its own children, and now it has created one final, magnificent, and utterly transient masterpiece. It is a funeral pyre and a birth announcement, all at once. The death of this solar system is now a beacon of hope for the next. The elements cast off in this beautiful shroud will one day cool, condense, and form a new nebula of gas and dust, which will, in some far distant future, collapse to form a new star with new planets and perhaps, just perhaps, new life. We watch as the tens of thousands of years pass. The glowing gas of the nebula continues to expand, getting thinner and fainter. The central star, the old core with no fuel left to burn, begins to cool. Its brilliant blue-white light fades, shifting to yellow, then to orange, then to a dim, sullen red. The ultraviolet radiation that lit up the nebula subsides. The beautiful colors fade. The glowing gas dissipates, merging invisibly with the vast cold spaces between the stars. The planetary nebula, the sun's beautiful final artwork, is gone. It has returned its borrowed atoms to the galaxy. Its books are balanced, its account is settled. And what is left? The solar system is now a profoundly different, quieter, and much darker place. The outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, still orbit, but they orbit a ghost. The magnificent red giant, the beautiful nebula, all of it is gone. At the center of the solar system, where the brilliant, life-giving sun once shone, there is now only the cooling, dying cinder of its core. The final stage of its existence, its long, quiet, and eternal retirement, has begun. The sun is dead. Long live the sun. The beautiful, ghostly bubble of the planetary nebula has expanded into nothingness, its atoms now scattered across light years, destined to wander the interstellar medium for eons before perhaps finding a new home in a new cloud of cosmic dust. The brief, spectacular light show is over. The solar system is now a place of profound silence and deep, abiding twilight. At its center, where the colossal, life-giving yellow dwarf once reigned, sits the sun's final remnant. It is a new kind of object, a new state of matter. It is a white dwarf. This is the exposed, collapsed core of the old sun, a sphere of carbon and oxygen ash, crushed by its own immense gravity into a ball roughly the size of the Earth. But though it is small, it is incredibly, almost incomprehensibly, dense. A single teaspoon of its material would weigh several tons. The atoms within it are packed so tightly that they have entered a state of quantum degeneracy, a bizarre condition where the electrons are stripped from their atoms and form a kind of quantum fluid that prevents the star from collapsing any further. It is a crystal sphere of carbon and oxygen, a diamond the size of a planet, though one so hot it glows with a brilliant white light. This residual heat is immense, the leftover energy from billions of years of nuclear fusion. The white dwarf begins its new existence with a surface temperature of over 100,000 degrees, shining with a hard, white, clinical light. But it is a light without a source of new energy. It is a dying ember. It has no fuel left to burn. It is simply radiating its stored heat away into the cold, empty space around it. This is the beginning of the longest, slowest, and most lonely process in the universe, the process of cooling. We remain at our observational post, but now our time machine slows. We watch as millennia bleed into millions of years, and millions of years bleed into billions. The solar system is a ghostly, quiet kingdom, illuminated by the fading light of its dead white dwarf king. The outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, continue their stately, silent orbits, just as they have for billions of years. But they are no longer the vibrant worlds we knew. They are lit by a star that is now no bigger than a small moon in their skies. The light that reaches them is a feeble, ghostly glow. Their atmospheres are frozen solid, their cloud tops encased in a permanent, deep frozen stillness. They are cosmic relics, orbiting a cosmic tombstone. Any moons that might have briefly harbored liquid water during the red giant phase, like Europa or Titan, are now frozen harder and colder than they ever were before. Their brief, improbable spring is a forgotten memory, their surfaces now covered in a thick, unyielding crust of ice as hard as granite. And what of the inner solar system? Mars, the old red planet, still orbits, a silent, cratered husk. It too is a deep frozen world, its thin atmosphere long since stripped away or frozen onto its surface. And Earth, if it survived being consumed by the red giant, it is a horror show. A charred, blackened, airless rock tidally locked to the white dwarf. One side is perpetually baked by the feeble but constant radiation of the dead star, while the other side, facing away, is frozen to a temperature approaching absolute zero. The planet that was once a perfect, spinning blue marble is now a static, two-faced nightmare, a cautionary tale written in stone and shadow. For billions of years, this is the state of the solar system. A silent, frozen, orbital dance around a slowly dying light. The white dwarf's brilliant white light fades with agonizing slowness. Over countless eons, it cools from white to a soft yellow, then to a dull orange, then to a sullen, deep red. It is now a red dwarf, though not one that generates its own energy. It is just a cooling ember, its light now too faint to significantly warm even the closest, most desolate planets. The universe itself is changing around it. We have traveled so far into the future now that the view from our solar system is different. The Andromeda Galaxy is no longer a separate, distant island of stars. It has collided and merged with our own Milky Way, the slow, graceful dance of galactic cannibalism now complete. The night sky, as seen from the frozen husk of Earth, would be filled with the stars of two galaxies, a spectacular sight for no eyes to see. The era of star formation in this new, larger galaxy is coming to an end. The great clouds of gas and dust, like the one our sun cast off in its planetary nebula, have been used up. Few new stars are being born. The universe is becoming a darker, quieter, and more orderly place, filled with aging, long-lived red dwarf stars and the cooling remnants of larger stars like our own. The white dwarf continues its slow fade. Billions upon billions of years pass, 10 billion, 100 billion, a trillion. The timescale is now so vast it has become meaningless, a cascade of zeros that our minds cannot grasp. The light from the dead sun is now a barely perceptible deep crimson glow. It gives off less heat than a child's nightlight. And finally, after a span of time so long it makes the entire previous lifespan of the sun seem like a fleeting moment, the last of its residual heat radiates away. Its glow flickers and dies. The light goes out. The star that warmed the earth, that drove the evolution of life, that was the subject of myths and religions and scientific theories, the star that was the anchor of our entire existence, is now a black dwarf. A cold, dead, invisible sphere of crystalline carbon and oxygen, the size of a planet drifting silently in the eternal, absolute darkness. It is a cosmic diamond, unseen, unlit, floating in a sea of unending night. It will never change again. It has reached the end of its story. It has achieved a perfect, eternal, and cold equilibrium. The solar system is now utterly dark. The planets still orbit, held in place by the black dwarf's gravity, but they are invisible, lightless ghosts. They are nothing but frozen, silent spheres, moving through a darkness so complete and so profound that it is indistinguishable from non-existence. The only light is the faint, ancient starlight from other distant, dying galaxies. And what of us? Where are we in this far, far distant future? If humanity, or some descendant of humanity, survived the death of the Earth, they would have had to have left this solar system billions of years ago. They would have had to become a star-faring species, finding a new home around a younger, more stable star. Perhaps they succeeded. Perhaps at this very moment, in this impossibly distant future, our descendants are living on a planet orbiting a long-lived, gentle red dwarf star somewhere else in the galaxy. They might be looking up at their own sky, telling their own children stories of their species' true, lost homeworld, a mythical place called Earth that orbited a brilliant yellow star long since dead. Our sun, our solar system, might be nothing more to them than a legend, a myth, a whisper in their own long history. Or perhaps they did not survive. Perhaps they succumbed to their own great filter long before the sun ever began to die. Perhaps the story of humanity ended a few centuries or a few millennia after our own time, and the death of the sun was a drama that played out to an empty theater. We have no way of knowing. From our vantage point, we have witnessed the entire life of a star. We saw its stable, life-giving youth. We saw it age into a monster that consumed its own children. We saw it create a final, beautiful, fleeting work of art in its planetary nebula, and we have watched it cool into a cold, dark, invisible corpse. It is a story of immense violence and quiet, majestic beauty. It is a story that reminds us that nothing in the universe is permanent. Not planets, not stars, not even the light itself. Everything is part of a great, slow, and unending cycle of birth, life, death, and renewal. The atoms that made up our sun will one day form another star. The death we have just witnessed is a necessary sacrifice for a life that is yet to come, in a place we will never know. You feel a sense of profound peace. The fear of an apocalyptic end is replaced by an understanding of its necessity, of its role in the great cosmic ballet. Our time in the sun was always meant to be finite. Life itself is a temporary condition, a brief, beautiful flicker of warmth and consciousness between two long, cold eternities. And knowing this, knowing the full, magnificent, and terrible story of our star, does not diminish the beauty of our own fleeting moment of sunlight. It enhances it. It makes the warmth of the sun on your skin, on that perfect summer afternoon we started with, all the more precious, all the more miraculous. It is a gift, and like all gifts, it is temporary, and that is what makes it beautiful. And so our journey ends in the cold and the quiet and the dark. The story of our sun, like all stories, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is a reminder that we live in a universe of cycles, a place where even stars are born to die, and where every ending is also a new beginning. The atoms forged in our sun's heart will one day be the building blocks of new worlds. The end of our story is the preface to another. There is a deep and abiding comfort in that. The universe is not a static thing. It is a great, unfolding narrative, and we were privileged to have been a part of one of its chapters. Thank you for joining me on this long journey tonight. I hope it has brought you a sense of perspective, a sense of peace. May your rest be deep, and may you feel the warmth of our own beautiful temporary sun when you wake. Until next time, Sleep well.